Welcome to the Business of Hotels podcast, examining the issues mattering most to owners and investors. And now, your hosts, Gary and Glenn.
Gary Isenberg, how are you?
I am tired.
Yeah, yeah. You know what? That is something we both have in common. I'm exhausted too. You would think we would be able to handle just a couple of jam-packed days that represents the NYU Hospitality Investment Conference.
Yeah, it's a crazy couple of days, and if I start drooling or fumbling over my words, it's
right.
Just what it is. I'm all talked out.
Yeah,
you know?
I like that we're putting out warnings for the audience right now.
Listen to this, at your own risk.
So I really tried hard last night to get a good night's sleep because I knew that today was going to be another difficult day.
So that means you missed the Highgate party, the jail party, the East Hill party.
All right, here's what happens. And I want all of you folks out there listening, and by the way, this is Glenn Haussman, your co-host here on the Business of Hotels podcast. This is what happens to me, Gary. I'm not ever a guy that's valued enough to get on any of the lists, right? And last night, it was list lockdown city, and I got rejected from all of the finer parties that were going on later in the evening.
So in other words, you got a good night's sleep because you were pouting.
That's right. I think I did shed a tear, for each party I couldn't get into. I'm like, you don't love me, JLL.
Well, I have to tell you that the parties were fantastic.
I'm sure they were. I just wish I knew about them and could have gotten on the list. So the JLL party was at the Edition, which I hear is a great property in Times Square.
It really is. They've done a phenomenal job there. Up on I guess we were up on the 7th or 9th floor. I forget exactly where it is,
right,
where the restaurant and food and beverage space is. Just phenomenal. Lots of just small little cubbies and breakout areas, and they have this neat little garden area, which I guess is their restaurant that has.
Right.
It's kind of like a fake garden. It makes you feel like you're outside, but you're not. But meanwhile, all around it opens up to the rooftop with some
nice.
garden. So it makes it feel like the entire thing's open. But if it rained and it was bad weather, you'd be inside.
That's pretty
cool.
I always joke around that I think it's a New York City building code that you have to have a rooftop bar now if you build a hotel.
Correct. I think that is code.
Right.
It's funny. A good friend of mine I went to college with is Kip Veerland from Marriott, and I was actually in line with him to get into the Edition. And typical Marriott fashion. As soon as he walks in, he's like, "This smells like an Edition."
Right.
I guess they have their own fragrance as well.
Yes, yeah.
Smelled then like any other hotel to me, but whatever.
Yeah. That's great. And there were a lot of people having a great time at this event. It is an exciting time in the industry. Although some of the news that was coming out of the conference itself, not the specific news, but some of the energy seemed to be, I think, a little bit depressed because people are starting to realize that maybe the peak is over and we're just going to be at this level for a while.
It's interesting you say that. I felt that from a conclusionary standpoint, there was nothing concluded anywhere.
Yeah. Well, I didn't even think anything got started. I kind of saw this as the non-event event because there was nothing really to be said. It's just same old, same old.
So some of the topics I heard is that the sharing economy in the hotel world are converging.
Right.
Are merging, converging, whatever words you want to use it, with Marriott's launch and so forth, and Hotel Tonight talking about getting in hotel space and so forth. But it really didn't go beyond that. There wasn't there was discussion about it, but no one had an answer or solution.
Right. Well, they should have asked me, Gary, because I've been preaching this convergence is the next big thing in hospitality now for a good 2 years.
Same as us. So have I. We both have.
Yes. And, and what I love about that is that everyone's starting to finally catch on, and it's an exciting time. I had the chance to be a panelist on an extended stay panel, and they're starting to touch, I think, around the periphery of all of this without fully understanding or embracing it fully. So I tried in my panel to be a big rallying cry that convergence is the next big thing, and we need to be on the lookout for, I think, societal workforce changes, the way people want to stay in general just kind of want to change. And I think that's going to open up a lot of opportunity.
Interesting you talk about the way people want to stay. I happened to see a speaker this morning from Margaritaville.
Right.
And, interesting with Margaritaville, because their whole vision and their whole business plan, so to speak, is not, they're not in the hotel business. They perceive themselves in the lodging business. And just that nuance of words is because they believe people stay. They want to allow people to stay in different ways.
Right.
If a person wants to buy a condo from them at a resort, or wants to stay in a hotel or room or whatever, they want them allowed to choose their own ways. So they have lots of variety of product, and it's all about a lifestyle and a choice.
Right.
And what's also interesting about Margaritaville, I never really realized this, but it's one of the few hotel brands that the brand was created first before the hotel product.
Right.
Margaritaville is synonymous with paradise.
Yep.
And people perceive Margaritaville as this fictional paradise somewhere, right?
Yeah.
And
it's 5 o'clock somewhere.
And exactly, and they use all that stuff within their framework of their brand. It's brilliant.
Gary, I'm afraid that I'm going to have to start gushing again about Margaritaville. I swore to myself I would try to cut down on it, but it is one of my favorite brands that are out there. It doesn't necessarily appeal to me necessarily. I happen to like it, and I've been to Jimmy Buffett shows and do all of that kind of stuff. But they know who their audience is, what the mechanisms are to engage them and get them excited, and they've really turned up the heat on being able to connect in all different areas of these people's lives. What started out as just people taking their RVs and following Jimmy around
parrot heads.
Right, the parrot heads. I'm a fish head, so I can totally relate to the parrot head people out there, right? So what started out as a movement from going from concert to concert during the summer season has now permeated all of these different avenues of their lifestyle. The resorts are terrific.
And what's interesting is with Margaritaville is people don't want to go home, right?
Right.
So they have products that they can take it home with them.
Yeah.
You want to take the drink machine home with you? Go ahead. You want to take the lawn furniture home? We'll ship it to you.
Right.
You can buy all this stuff.
Well, Gary, before my kids had a little too much exuberance, I used to have some great Margaritaville pool floats, which was absolutely terrific. One of them actually had a Bluetooth speaker in it.
So I have the Margaritaville drink machine with the 3 blenders.
Yeah.
Nice. Oh yeah, it's awesome.
You have that at your house in the Outer Banks?
Of course.
All right, and one other little factoid that people may not realize about Margaritaville is this very office building is looking over the construction of the brand new Margaritaville that's coming here to Times Square in 2020.
Correct. That is true. So that's a great brand. Another interesting brand that had some time to speak to Rick Wagner with Outrigger Hotels.
Yep.
They're
Jeff Wagner.
Jeff Wagner, excuse me. Sorry. Thank you.
Yep.
Sorry, Jeff.
I actually spoke with him too, and I have a podcast coming up on that on the
Excellent.
No Vacancy Show. So what did he share with you?
So I just find that brand is, again, fascinating. Very, very different than the Margaritaville side, but the fact that they're just attached themselves to beach. And they're looking for opportunities to grow. They have a beach resort product. They have a off the beach kind of product as well, but still catering to that. And I just found, it's just they know who they are, and they're going to expand upon it. And it's just really cool. And I think there's lots of those unique kind of brands coming and have evolved over the years.
Right. And one of the things I'll encourage all of you to listen on this very podcast feed to the No Vacancy Show where I speak with Jeff Wagner. That'll be coming out in a few weeks. But a highlight of that is they were a family-owned company since 1947 until they sold out to KSL in 2016. And that really allowed them to put in a lot of modern operating techniques, strategies, technologies, and stuff to help transform the company on one side, and now they're investing $200 million to reinvent their portfolio on the renovation side.
Yeah, I think when they expand and start to expand, potentially to Florida and to Asia.
Right.
I mean, obviously Asia's their kind of bread and butter between Hawaii.
Yeah,
and the
they've
Pacific.
got believe it or not, they have a select service brand in Japan.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I think as they grow to other coastal towns,
Right.
it could be, I think the reason I bring it up when we talk about Margaritaville is I could almost see them being in very similar markets.
Right.
So anyway,
Yeah.
That being said, let's get back to the themes of the conference. So we talked a little bit about the sharing economy and the convergence of that. I think there was a lot of talk about is there too many brands, as we just discussed a minute ago. And I think we're going to continue to see brands as we've discussed in other podcasts.
And I do highly encourage everyone to look back at that show where we really talk about branding. What is the meaning of a brand and how to even select a brand that works for you?
And, and obviously all the predictors and so forth and forecasters of the world.
Prognosticators.
Thank you. They have, saying that we're going to end up 2% ahead of last year or year-over-year growth in RevPAR this year. Interesting factoid is New York is down 11% in RevPAR for the first quarter.
Yep.
One interesting thing that no one's really speaking of is that first quarter of 2018 was, bless you, had an anomaly of growth. I mean, it had significant growth.
Revenue growth?
Revenue growth and RevPAR growth in 2018 over 2017, which seemed to be an anomaly. So the fact that we're down 19 over 18, the question I would ask, and I haven't looked at this, I just kind of heard this data today, is really what is 19 compared to 17? Because I have a feeling 18's first quarter, for whatever reason, was very, very strong. I remember everyone questioning why was it so strong.
Right.
So there might be an anomaly there. So it might not be as such bad news as we think.
Yeah, and also let's put out a little a warning there as well that New York is not every other single market.
Correct.
And this particular market is interesting because there's been so much influx of brand new product, especially in that mid-market.
In that mid-market, a lot of new 100-room properties and so forth. Whereas if you look at the overall growth of supply as a percentage, it's not a lot of rooms because we still have a lot of tanker hotels. I mean, you got the Sheraton that's 1,800 rooms, you got the Hilton 1,800 rooms, you got the Marquis that's 1,700 or 2,100. Yeah. So I mean, just those three hotels alone, we're talking about 6,000 rooms or something I just mentioned. And meanwhile, if you have a 100-room hotel, just as a percentage of those, what's that?
Right.
1%. Right. So.
Yeah, it's so true. All right. So what's the other big thing that you saw coming out of the conference?
It's funny. One, I attend these conferences and I don't participate in a lot of the content typically because we have meetings and we're trying to generate business and network with people, right? That's the purpose for us. But since we started this podcast, quite frankly, I was like, I need something to talk about. I gotta go get some content. Uh-huh. I had a hard time really grappling and grabbing something from this conference.
I agree with you, and we're going to share with you why as soon as we get back from this break. So stick around.
Hey, this is Gary Isenberg with LWHA Hospitality Advisors, president of their asset management division, where we bridge the gap between hotel ownership and management. View us at our website at www.lwhospitalityadvisors.com. You can always email me at gary.isenberg@lwhadvisors.com. Feel free to call me as well at 212-300-6684, extension 108. Look forward to speaking to you or receiving your emails.
Gary, that is why I said at the beginning of the show, I think it's the show of no news. Not really much happened. It seems to be, I think the hotel industry has moved to a story of little increments, either one way, either the other way, a little bit forward, a little bit backward, depending on the topic.
You also think people are afraid to commit?
I don't, people afraid to commit to what? New property?
Afraid to commit like,
oh yeah.
Tomorrow's a recession, or we're gonna continue to have 20%.
I'll tell you why I think that's because I think that people have lost their confidence to predict anything because this particular upcycle has changed all the rules. Yes, all upcycles and down cycles have different reasons. And
the only two things they have is a start and an end.
Right.
Other than that, who knows what happens?
Right. All right. So now we're here, and 2 years ago people were saying it's got to end. It's got to end. It's got to end. I was saying it's got to end, and I think they just stopped because there's nobody knows. And I tend to think that it's more of a change of that's little bit at a time as opposed to big changes. It'll creep down, it'll creep up, whatever it'll be, it will be. But unless you have that black swan event, blah, 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 I don't think there's going to be a wholesale dropout. I just truly believe, and I've said this a million times before, that we have changed systemically in society to an experiential culture, much more from a materialistic culture. Travel is much more imbued into what we're supposed to do.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I think, as we talked about in other podcasts, the world has become a smaller place.
Right.
And now that it's a smaller place, people are going to travel more. And it's more reachable, if you would.
Right.
Or you can get not that places got closer, but the fact that the cultures have merged.
Right. So I'm thinking just alone the fact that 10 years ago, the traveling soccer team meant you went to the town next to you. Now, everyone I know who has kids that play sports, whatever the sport is, they have to go and stay in a mid-market select service hotel every single weekend.
What do you think's growing the brands?
That's
Why do you
right.
think we have more brands?
That's why I say there's a systemic change. It's not
correct.
just people want to go and have those kinds of experiences where they go out and they see the sights and they have the food, but it's because their lifestyle that they've chosen, the things that they want to be able to give their children on a regular basis.
You know, if you
has
think
changed.
about it, when we grew up, I think I'm a little older than you.
Yes.
You know, and I grew up.
Yes, you are, Gary.
Grew up in the late 60s, early 70s, and growing up, you know, the only time you stayed in a hotel was when you were on vacation.
Right.
You know, and not always. Also, you did a lot of home rentals or, you know, going to a cabin somewhere or whatever it might be.
Yep.
But it was the road trip and it was a hotel. Whereas today, there's so many different reasons why families and people stay in hotels. Like you just said, the soccer trip,
Yep.
right? The cheerleading competition.
Oh, my goodness.
The gymnastics competition.
Right.
The track meets. I mean, it goes on
Everything.
and on and on. Everything people do and children do today. Families live farther apart today.
Right.
And they travel. So,
That's a great point right there.
you know, so there's a lot more that the world has become bigger. Our neighborhoods have become bigger.
Right.
You know, for my wife and I, we travel. I don't know if everyone knows this, but I have a house outside of Philadelphia, and I commute to New York once or twice a week, and I have a place up here. But, I mean, literally for my wife and I, we both do this. Driving 2 hours for us is going around the block.
Right.
I mean, that's a normal drive for us. That's like someone driving 15 minutes to work.
That's insane.
But that's where
I know.
people are today.
I agree. I mean, I just think about my friends that are on the Long Island Railroad every day, going all the way from far out reaches of Long Island into the city, 2.5 hour commutes in each direction every single day. For them, taking their family away from a weekend, it's no big deal.
Correct.
Yeah.
Go away, go stay somewhere. And the reasons we travel are changing, right? We're traveling for hobbies. We're traveling for our kids' sporting events. Kids are traveling on school trips. How many schools have trips and stuff? Like 5th, 6th grade, 7th grade. I never went on any overnight trip. I was lucky if we took the Long Island Railroad into the city to see the circus at Madison Square Garden.
That was pretty lucky. You know what? I always wanted to see those elephants walk through the tunnel. Never.
Yeah, I
had a chance
never
to do
missed that too. Or the floats going through the Lincoln Tunnel.
Yeah.
At Thanksgiving. But anyway, obviously you can tell we're both New Yorkers.
Yeah, right. Okay, so I think we've made a great argument that on one side there's all of those changes. Plus, I would say, I don't have numbers in front of me, but just as a hunch, because air travel has changed and grown so much, business travel has just continued to grow over the decades. The amount of time people go away, the amount of reasons they go away.
Yeah, I mean, if you look back in the 50s or so, air travel was a luxury, right? Now it's a necessity.
That's right.
You know, it's very different today. People would travel. I mean, traveling around. You look at the movie The Founder about McDonald's. Great movie, right?
If you haven't seen it, people get it right.
It's phenomenal. And he's out there driving cross country, selling milkshake machines. What salesman today drives cross country? It doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So all those dynamics have changed. The need for hotels, the need for more. The other thing that we haven't talked about, 20, 30 years ago, when you walked into a town, everything was localized.
Right.
Now everything's national chains.
Yes.
How do you think they keep those national chain standards? Because the store people travel from state to state and need to stay in hotels.
Yeah.
Everything's become much more on a non-local scale, on a national scale, which is driving more hospitality.
So all of these things in aggregate have created, I think, a different balance between supply and demand on a permanent basis in the hospitality industry, right? And again, except blah, 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 black swan events, I think that it will just go up or go down depending on the neighborhood, depending on whatever it is. So that's why I don't think there was any huge news coming out of this particular event.
Until there is.
Yes, right.
Until there is. The new norm and all this kind of stuff. And something will happen, whether it's 6 months from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, that will basically turn it upside down and reset it, and everything we just said will be worth naught.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the reality.
But the good news is you guys will probably forget about this particular episode. And, it won't matter. Okay, so on the other hand, I would like to talk a little bit, since you see it on development. Some of the conversations that I've had are, more money is now coming in from individual investors that have money that want to do their dream project and build a hotel. It's kind of like that guy that wants to open the bar, and now we've got the folks that want to open up hotels that don't know anything about the hotel business.
And if anything is cyclical that I've seen in the past, typically when those floodgates open, the cycle is ending.
Right. That was always the sign.
Right.
When outside money starts coming in, it's over.
And I think we've seen outside money flowing for several years now, and I think we're continuing to see it. I do think, though, that there's that outside money is a little bit more educated today.
Yes.
Than it was before.
From the people I spoke to, it's a lot of doctors, lawyers, people that made their money.
And I mean educated in the sense that they're also willing to invest and partner with people that are educated in our space.
Yes,
that's what I mean by that.
Yeah. Just why guys like you do.
Exactly.
That, right?
We're very busy getting inquiries constantly on clients that need advice on branding or management companies or development, market studies, feasibility studies, all that work. And it's great to see the cycle continuing. I do think that the opportunities are starting to. I think there's still a flow of people wanting to come in, but the opportunities are becoming less, right? In the sense that, if there was 20 prime locations last year, maybe there's 10 this year, right, in a certain market. So because they're being taken up.
Yeah.
But what's interesting though with development is you're starting to see, secondary places become hot markets, right? Places that you wouldn't have thought of, like Asheville, North Carolina. You see Charleston, you see Savannah, all these kind of secondary. Even Nashville is now probably one of the top 25 markets, which I don't think it was. I don't think it was anywhere near that 10 or 15 years ago.
Right. They still have the largest percentage increase with the new pipeline construction in terms of rooms than any other city.
And I think that's another thing that's kind of stimulating some development and growth. Is it used to be that the blue chip was the top big markets, right? The New Yorks, the San Francisco, but now these other markets are kind of becoming the blue chips right now for development, and I think that's fueling it as well, and bringing on right now I think I'd avoid certain of the old time markets and go to the newer markets because there's probably greater opportunity.
Right. You know what I was thinking about when we were talking about the systemic changes? I think population growth has also probably affected it as well. I'm starting to think about population spread out into the suburbs too, as all these new subdivisions are built.
Yeah, I think and actually we are having the reverse right now.
Yes,
right?
I know that
we're having that going and coming into more urban markets, and I think you're also seeing what's also spurring development of hotels as well is this whole urban living environment. So you go out into the suburbs of Philadelphia and so forth, and you'll see developments like King of Prussia's doing one, unbelievable, where it's residential. It's commercial, it's retail, and it's hotels. All high-rise, integrated, walking around a town center. I mean, these kind of developments are really becoming hot. So this urban-suburban living is what seems to be happening. Yeah,
I really think that's pretty cool way of living. If I was in my 20s or 30s, that would have loved that.
And what's interesting is all these kind of mixed-use kind of developments are incorporating a hotel into it as well. Because you have restaurants that when their national people come in, need somewhere to stay, retail, you've got commercial office buildings that have needs, and just it's an interesting kind of development. But going back to your whole point is we're changing the way we live.
Right.
Our experiences are changing.
And I think that might be the big takeaway from this conversation that we've been having is that people that have been doing things the way they've been doing things in the hotel industry for so many years have gotten conditioned that that's the way it's going to be.
And now that it's changed, we're having a hard time with it.
We're still trying to figure it out, right?
Or fit it into that round hole.
Right.
It's a square peg now. It's not fitting in a round hole anymore.
We've moved away from pretending things like Airbnb doesn't exist because it's uncomfortable
to embracing it.
Embracing it and trying to figure out how to leverage that.
Correct.
Right? So that's going to be a really interesting thing. One other thing that I wanted to talk about is I had the opportunity just prior to the start of the NYU conference. Hilton had a women's leadership executive forum, and I thought was pretty awesome and worth mentioning. There was probably about 50 women that attended this to see a great panel of amazing female leaders that are in the Hilton family. And I just thought it was a really wonderful, inspirational kind of a day that really showed people how they could be successful.
That's phenomenal. And I'm glad you brought that up about the women in our in our industry. Still if you look at NYU and so forth, at the top levels and so forth, still predominantly men. Even at the parties last night, it's like 90% men, 10% women.
Sure.
What you are seeing, though, is definitely a lot more youthful women coming into the organizations, and therefore they will have the more senior level positions 10, 15 years down the road. And that's nice to see. But you're definitely seeing a change. There's definitely more women speaking and on panels than there had been in before. There's definitely more women attending, but it's still very much under.
Yeah. Well, hopefully that imbalance will go away
at some point.
But I did want to give a prop to, good props to Hilton for doing such a great job on that event. So thank you for doing that. I actually have a couple of videos up on my LinkedIn account on either No Vacancy or my Glenn Haussman thing. If you want to friend me on
share
that.
the advertising revenue you get
yeah.
this, Glenn?
Well, I want to.
I feel like this is more of a Glenn commercial than it is like.
Sorry, I just want people to see these great interviews that were up there. Gary, any final thoughts that you have before we wrap up this thing for today?
I tell you, this is my last. Well, actually, I have a dinner to go to tonight, and then I'll be passing out. But I'm looking forward to passing out.
Great.
Thanks. It was a great conference.
Excellent, Gary. I think I was most excited for this part of the show where you tell us how to find you and if you could get the email address correct.
You would have to do this. All right. You can find me at Gary.Isenberg. Gary. Now, let's start all over. You can find me, Gary.Isenberg, at LWHadvisors.com. You can also view our website at www.LWHospitalityadvisors.com.
All right, excellent.
I can be reached at 201-424-2495, my cell phone. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Gary. Well, it's been great to be here. Of course, thank you for listening to this Business of Hotel podcast. Gary, I think this is a real fun one.
It was a fun one. I enjoyed myself, and I'm telling you, I think I need to go smoke a cigar and pass out.
I like that idea. Unfortunately, I've got to go catch a train and be a commuter tonight. Thanks for listening. We'll be back next time with another edition of the Business of Hotels podcast.